Welcome to Prism of Torah with Rebbe Saf Aaron Prisman, engaging Divrei Torah, packed with stories and practical insights. Find us wherever you get your podcasts or at prismoftorah.org.
Shalom Avocha. In this week's Parshas Metzorah, we know that we talk about a person that was a Metzora, and there's a certain ritual of becoming pure that he goes through before he brings his sacrifice. When a person becomes ritually impure, such as the Metzora, the Torah prescribes the remedy. Part of the remedy to become pure is to immerse oneself in a mikveh. As it says in Metzora, for example, in Perik Yudaled Pasuk Tes, it says, "V'rachatz es besaro b'mayim v'taher," that at one point in this process he has to totally immerse himself in water, and by doing so he'll become pure. This requirement of immersing oneself in a mikveh appears throughout Jewish law, after contact with the dead, following childbirth, and for the Metzora who actually spoke harmfully Lashon Hara about another Jew. Yet the question I want to deal with is, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu choose water as the purifying agent? Where is that coming from? Why specifically water? What deeper principle can we understand over here that water is the spiritual agent that purifies a person and seems to be the agent through which a person can do teshuvah? I would assume that the simple answer for this question, perhaps, and I think it's brought in the HaChinuch, is that water symbolizes becoming clean again. You use water to clean. However, perhaps we can suggest something else. The Or HaChaim in Bamidbar, Perik Yutes Pasuk Beis, teaches that all tumah, all impurity, stems from life departing a physical body. For example, a corpse, an avela, transmits the most severe impurity because it represents this idea, a departure of a soul. A woman after childbirth as well becomes impure because life left her body, in a sense creating a spiritual vacuum. Perhaps one can say also that that's why a woman is more impure after giving birth to a girl, because a female, has more potential to give life, to carry a baby, etc., as opposed to a boy. But bracket that. The Metzora specifically is also considered like the dead. That's based on the Gemara Nedarim, Daf Samech Daled Amud Beis, because he corrupted speech, which is the very expression of life. As the Targum, Onkelos, in Bereishis, Perik Beis, Pasuk Zayin explains, Vayipach be'apo nishmat chayim, when Hashem breathed life into man, this actually manifested as the power of speech. And by misusing this gift that Hashem gave us, a person becomes a Metzora, and the Metzora actually diminished this idea of life. Based on this understanding, the Sefer HaChinuch, in the mitzvah of Metzora, which is mitzvah number Kuf Ayin Gimel, 173, actually tells us another Tol Mahalach, another idea of why it is very fitting and why Hashem orchestrated as such that the mikveh will be water, and through water we get purified. The Chinuch reveals why water specifically restores purity, and that's because before the world was created, before creation, as the Chumash in Bereishis says, everything was tovavo, but everything was covered by water. As it says in the beginning of the Psukim, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. At the beginning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the heavens and the earth. Ve'haaretz hayta tovavo ve'choshech al pnei tehom ve'roch Elokim merachefet. And here's the punchline, al pnei hamayim. Everything was hovering upon the surface of the waters, meaning water was everywhere at the beginning of creation. Based on this, the Sefer HaChinuch wants to say that before creation, where the world was entirely covered by water, that was the starting point of the world. And hence, entering the mikveh that is totally full of water and not stam water, halachically has to be water that wasn't in a vessel, symbolizing this idea it's the natural waters that are connected to the earth. Therefore, symbolize this concept of returning to the pre-state before man was even created. In a sense, a complete reset to the beginning. Because since impurity represents this idea of departure of life, immersion in the waters of the original waters they symbolize this opportunity of spiritual rebirth, in a sense as if we're restarting again, recalibrating. Perhaps this idea is way deeper than just a symbolic ritual process of becoming pure. The Torah itself says in Devarim, Perek Lamed Pasuk Yutes, I have placed with you life and death, and then says choose life, meaning every sin to a certain extent represents a small death and diminishment of spiritual vitality. The Mishnah in Yoma teaches us that Hashem Himself is the mikveh for the Jewish people. And it compares Hashem to a mikveh. Ma mikveh metalis Yisrael, just like the mikveh purifies Am Yisrael, kach HaKadosh Baruch Hu metalis Yisrael. So too HaKadosh Baruch Hu purifies Klal Yisrael. Meaning, through teshuvah, through returning to our source, and that's why it's called teshuvah, returning to our source, we experience this genuine rebirth and emerge with a clean state. Yiratzon that will understand that it's never too late. Hashem always gives us an opportunity to restart, to recalibrate, to do teshuvah, which is a rebirth and opportunity to go back and restart. This idea is also symbolized by the fact that the Jewish calendar goes based on the moon and not on the sun, because there's always a rebirth. The moon restarts. There's always a cycle. It restarts all the time. We say this 3 times a day in our davening. Hachzireinu b'teshuvah shleima lefanecha. We have Rosh Hashanah. Some are known to have Yom Kippur Katan every month. You see this ongoing theme in Yiddishkeit of having an opportunity to recalibrate and restart. And that's exactly what the mikveh is resembling. And hence it's very mat'im that it's based on water, reminding us of how the world was created, and we're getting another opportunity to restart. I would like to end with a story adapted from Rabbi Yechmiel Milstein. And here's the story. A young man with an extraordinary mind, unfortunately, like some people do, became totally addicted. Despite his brilliant yeshiva background, after treatments and struggles, he managed to stay clean for 8 months. Not perfect, but truly putting his life back together. He reconnected with his community, kept regular times for learning Torah, and visited spiritual leaders who believed in him. Then one night he suddenly had an overwhelming urge to try to get some drugs again. Without thinking, he boarded a train to Harlem, knowing he could find drugs there easily. He had exactly $50 in his pocket, which is pretty much all he had to his name. Spotting what he thought was a dealer, he approached. You got some stuff for me? The man said, yeah, wait here. He returned with 3 rough men who attacked the young man, beating him, stealing his money, and leaving him with a bloody nose lying down there on the street. The next day he arrived at his rabbi's house, face swollen and arms bruised. I'm no good, he said, voice breaking. 8 months of progress, gone. I couldn't even make a successful buy. I'm a complete nothing. The rabbi looked at him for a long moment, and then tears began streaming down his face. Do you understand what happened? You think you failed, but you're sitting here clean. You came to me instead of trying again to get more stuff. He leaned forward. Hashem sent those men to stop you, to protect you from destroying everything you've built. You think last night was your lowest point? It was actually Hashem catching you mid-fall. That night became a turning point. The young man realized that even at his lowest moment, he had never been alone. Like emerging from a mikveh, he understood that his past didn't define him. The very fall he thought would destroy him had become the waters of his rebirth. We have to go through life knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us, waiting and yearning for us to return to Him at any point in time. It's never too late, and we always have a mikveh waiting for us around the corner. Have a good Shabbos.
This concludes another episode of the Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Ellie Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on the Prism of Torah.